special guest,
Katie Schide.
this is the Power Motion Picnic Hour. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Power Motion Picnic Hour. As always, I'm your host, Dave, and as always, alongside me is
Trevor.
Trevor. What's going on? How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing pretty great. Just living life, running, thinking about running, talking about running. How about you?
Yeah, same. I'm planning about running. I'm dreaming big about running next year. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, same. I'm planning too. And an exciting week, as you could hear in the intro. We had a great special guest this week, and we had an awesome talk.
We had a great talk. Thank you so much, Katie. Just a real pleasure and an honor, and incredibly humble, and just some fantastic perspective, I thought, when you consider somebody so accomplished as her. But yeah, thank you so much, Katie, for coming on and adding special guest to your resume.
Yeah, and quite a revealing episode in a number of ways, and I guess we'll let people find that out. As to get there, I still haven't decided what I will and will not bleep from our discussion.
Right.
So even I don't know, but how much information will be coming out from that interview. But I'm excited to find out.
We'll see. Well, I think any information divulged related to our alma mater or otherwise is probably out there in the public domain for the intrepid listener that goes to seek it. So we'll see. We'll see how judicious you are in your edits,
and how easy we want to make it for people to find out more information about the history of this podcast, and how easy I want to make it on myself to edit the interview itself.
So another factor.
Yeah, there's going to be a crossroads there. As a famous alma mater of our school once said, two paths diverged in a wood, and I didn't have time to do all the edits that I wanted, and that has made all the difference. I don't think he was an alum, but he did. He's associated. A lot of hints.
Associated, prominent name in the area. I believe there's an interpretive trail.
Yeah, I think he was paid to live there. was the job he held,
Yeah.
And that's a great clue. And yeah, more clues to come. I don't know, what do you think? Should we go to the interview and then come back, or is there anything you want to discuss off the top?
Let's go right to it, and then we can come back to some regular business right after the interview.
All right, let's go. This is the Power Motion Picnic Hour.
Katie's mom grew up in Sudbury.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's where you are right now.
That's where I am right now.
Oh, that's cool. All right, that's where I am right now.
You're also in Sudbury?
No, I mean, like, this is where I am.
Okay.
I'm in New York City, in Manhattan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Different than Sudbury.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. I'm in a small apartment in the city. You can almost see the entire apartment right now. That's the way I go. Where are you calling it from?
I'm in southern France, so like an hour and a half north of Nice in the mountains.
That sounds great. Sounds
very, very lovely.
Sounds very nice.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys both. I appreciate that. How's your French?
It's conversational.
That's good. I've claimed that level of French before, and I don't think that's correct.
It's tough. It depends on the situation and who I'm talking to and what we're talking about.
Sure, yeah. I'm gonna start describing my level of French based on whatever Duolingo level I'm on.
Oh yeah, that's not a good representation, because I didn't really take any formal classes. So everything I know is just from what my partner and his friends say to each other, which is not like grammatically correct. So
Yeah.
I can't like write an email. I can sort of write an email with like all the new spell check things in Google, but I can't, it's not well done. But I could like have a conversation while skiing.
Yeah, you could speak super slang.
Yeah.
It's like in the movie Wayne's World, where, if you've seen that, the character Cassandra says she learned English from watching Police Academy movies.
Oh,
I do remember that.
Anyway,
Good reference.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and at our mutual alma mater, renowned for its language program, you have to take 7 out of the 8 like electives or whatever or course
oh
types.
yeah.
And I think both Dave and I sat out language and took everything else.
Yeah.
I forget what I sat out actually, because I did language, but I did Spanish, but really, really poorly.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what I should have done was Spanish poorly. That would have benefited me more now.
yeah. Well, speaking of French language, do you know the French ultra runner Benet Marmaswal?
Benyat Marmisol.
Okay, thank you. So you cut me from butchering it even worse.
Yeah,
So
but you got
we
a little bit of butchering in there, which I appreciated.
yeah, I did get some solid butchering in. We reached out to him after Western States to see if he wanted to be a special guest and used like a poor Google Translate to speak in French because we knew that sort of his interview was with a translator and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was our first. I think he just did not respond. I think it was just not gonna work. We had
Yeah,
too much of a
yeah.
language gap. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining and we know you're very busy with all sorts of amazing feats and races and everything else. But we usually like to sort of start with just an introduction, if you don't mind, just sort of saying your name and a little bit about yourself for our listeners.
Yeah. My name is Katie Schide. In French, it's Katie Schide, and I live in France, in the southern part of the Alps, about an hour and a half north of Nice. It's our closest major population point. I live in a village of about 50 people, and with my partner, who is French and also a professional trail runner. I grew up in Maine. I grew up hiking in the Whites in New Hampshire, worked in the AMC mountain huts in New Hampshire. Went to Middlebury College. Also graduated from the University of Utah and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology with a PhD last June in geology.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on. We really appreciate having you. And this is
Yeah.
I think this is our second Middlebury graduate guest, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh
Uh,
no, who beat me?
um, Probably a less well-known runner, Jim Pergolesi, that was part of our class a few years before you, I think.
Although when he said the college name, I bleeped it out on the episode,
We,
which I was
yeah.
partially because we're trying to. I don't know why. It was funny. Maybe that was the main reason.
Well, you should
Yeah.
get Hillary Girardi and Jeff Colt, and then you can just keep having a Middlebury alumni podcast.
That would be amazing. Yeah, we would love to branch out in the community. But yeah, Jim was he's a long distance runner as well, but more on the amateur level, I'd say. So not sponsored or pro, but he did set out. He was talking about an FKT in the Adirondacks. That was something like 130 mile plus. So he does long distance stuff too. But
Do we know if he set that FKT?
I think he got injured. We need to check in on him on that. Yeah. I think he got injured at a race and was
All right.
unable to do the FKT.
We'll
So
we'll follow up next week about that.
yeah. And Katie, you're very humble in your introduction. I love that sort of one of the first things you mentioned is, being part of the huts and hiking around the whites. They're near and dear to the Power Motion Picnic Hour here. But for those that are maybe less familiar, our sort of listening audience is a bit of a blend, kind of runs the gamut of the running world. So we have a lot of road runners and short distance runners and certainly a lot of trail runners as well. But you've also won and placed very highly in like most of the biggest ultra races in the world, correct?
Yeah, I guess my best results on paper are probably winning UTMB in 2022. Second at Western States this past year, and I won the Grand Raid, which is the Diagonal des Fous, which is a major 100-mile race in France. Well, it's on Reunion Island, which is part of France, but
That's
in the
supposed to
Indian
be a
Ocean.
really, really wild event, right?
It's in the name. It's called Diagonal des Fous, which is the diagonal of the crazies. So yeah, it's a totally insane event, and it's named appropriately.
That's awesome. And your Western States time was also the second fastest ever. So, right. And so you would have won it any other year.
Yeah, but I don't really. It was the second fastest time ever, but every year is different, so it's hard to say that I would have won any other year because the circumstances are always different. I appreciate you offering that up, but
Yeah, nice
I like
framing. I like that.
Well,
uh,
it is a very cool way to look at it though, and we talk about this a little bit in relation to races or FKTs or even I know you've done some FKT stuff as well, Hut Traverse, and in any case, you might know Jack Kenzel is a name that we've talked about a little bit, and even when he set the sort of reclaimed the or I guess beat his own fastest Prezi Traverse, sort of brought it back to the Dolly Cop way up the Daniel Webster Scout Trail, and sort of something in his write-up, he said, like, okay, this is a time now, but the trail changes so much in each year, and like you've spent time on like the terrain is just drastically different than what it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and that sort of, I guess, acceptance that these things are not like a time is also like a point in time, which I think is sort of what you're saying.
Yeah, I can get behind like saying that there's course records at races when it's like a super established, always exactly the same route, like something like Zigama or Sierre now, like something super iconic that's been in the sport for a super long time. Well, I think Western states could maybe fall into that, but I would argue that maybe the weather conditions and everything can change that. But even something like UTMB, people like to throw around like, oh, the course record. But if you really follow UTMB, there's small changes to the course every year. There's also like, I think at a race like UTMB, the course record is not really relevant because the race runs so differently each year depending on who goes out in front. If someone is, being conservative, it basically depends on how the race is run. And I think it's more like when you think of marathon running, right? Like if you go to Berlin or I guess London, like a flat course, you're running for it's basically a time trial. But when you go to like a championship style race, we don't really care what the time is, right? Like nobody really cares what their Boston Marathon time is if they won. It's I guess they care, but it's who won. It's not like if you were 30 seconds faster or not. Yeah, it's more
Right.
like it's more of a race than a time trial.
Yeah. Yeah.
do you prefer running in like a race with those like ideal conditions where you could set what would be a course record, or do you like it when the weather's all crazy and it's not going to be a course record, but it's going to be interesting and maybe come down to some other skills or strategic choices during the race?
Oh yeah, I like crazy weather things because it just adds more to think about and more. Yeah, it's becomes more than a fitness race. I mean, generally, ultra running already falls into that category because it's not only a fitness race. I think we're starting to get closer and closer to that, but there's still a huge gap between just being fit and winning an ultra race. So yeah, I like when there's challenging conditions, but also this year at Western States was pretty interesting for me to see what I'm capable of in like kind of good conditions and running against. I think it's important to note that like having Courtney at the race running so strongly, pretty close to me for a good chunk of the race, that for sure like brings up my confidence and my time as well.
Hmm.
And having tons of knowing who's behind you too. So it's a
Yeah.
mix of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And something like UTMB too, I mean, the distance, yes, there's weather, and then there's also things like cows, right? That can like just cross the trail, and like there's just so many variables. And I think it's important to have like that, what you're saying, which is an idea that like a lot of times an FKT write up will talk about all the things that could have like gone better, and it's sort of like, well, it's never going to be perfect, right? You just need to accept sort of what it is, and I think that sometimes gets lost,
You
maybe.
have to accept the unpredictability of the cows. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm postulating. I don't know.
Yeah.
Katie, you'd have to confirm or deny, but
Yeah, I think there's kind of this mindset you see. I've talked to other people who are kind of at a similar point in our careers where you see that those things that in your first races you saw as like, oh, well, I would have been faster if my stomach was fine, or if my headlamp was brighter, or if, I don't know, I didn't break my pull. But then you learn that those are the things that you can control. Like you can get better at eating. You can, make sure that your gear works properly. You can have a backup plan. And instead of seeing those as like, oh, well, I would have been fine if that didn't happen, you approach the race like, I need to control everything the best I can. And then I don't have like an excuse. It's just that's what
yeah,
happened and that's part of the race. And I did everything I could to control all those things. But of course, there's a point where you can't control everything.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, no, I think that's an awesome perspective. And now, so on top of all these accomplishments, you are now special guest on the Power Motion Picnic Hour too. So this is yeah,
That's
Adding
all.
it to my resume.
you can
Yeah.
add it to the resume. So I would love to talk a little bit about, I mean, all sorts of things, but hopefully I know you go on a lot of podcasts, and we'll try not to make you retread like the training and fitness and nutrition, whatever the standard stuff is. Just point us in the direction of some podcast where you've already said those things. We
I
don't
have
want
no
to be.
idea what they talk about on most running podcasts. I don't really listen to any. I listen, so yeah. So I assume they ask about cows as well, but I actually don't know for sure.
We're not sure,
Yeah.
but maybe kind of back to your roots, back to home a bit in New England. So you spent time up in the Whites. You worked at was it the Madison Hut?
I worked my first summer at Greenleaf. Then I
Okay,
worked at Madison for 2 summers and then finished at Lakes of the Clouds.
nice. So what is your favorite mountain or spot on the presidential range?
Oh, wow. These are great podcast. I have nobody's asked me this in a
Oh,
podcast
Oh,
good.
good, good, good.
Sweet.
Um, oh man, that's a good question. I really like the Northern Prezzies. Um, yeah, they just have like I spent 3 summers in the Northern Prezzies, so they have a special place in my heart. But I really love Great Gulf, like the
Mhm.
whole Great Gulf Wilderness area, Sphinx Trail. Um, yeah, there's some really cool like little trails in there that are just really like fun in like a type 1 kind of way, where you're
Mhm.
kind of like crawling around, getting destroyed by bugs and branches. And I have a lot of great memories from Great Gulf, and just, yeah, it's just kind of like a scrappy area and you really feel like you're in it, more than something like, yeah, more than like a trail in Europe where hundreds of thousands of tourists have walked in the same spot. So
Right, right.
probably Great Gulf.
That's a
Awesome.
very New England answer, right? That's like a very ski the East vibes.
I don't want to
Yeah.
ski the East, but
No?
I'll go run there.
You're you're done. Have you ever skied the East? Did you do that growing up?
I skied a little bit growing up. There was this I don't know if you're did you guys grow up in Maine, or are you from Maine?
Um, Trevor grew up in New Hampshire, and
Okay.
I mostly grew up in Massachusetts.
Okay. In Maine we had this like winter kids passport. It was for sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, or fifth, sixth, seventh, something in like middle school. And you got like a few free lift tickets to some ski hills. But then it was understood, obviously, that you were so young, your parents would come and pay for their
Yeah.
ticket. That's how they made money. But it
Yeah.
got us to go skiing. I mean, my parents didn't grow up skiing. Um, so I learned how to do like, the snow plow at Titcomb Mountain, which is, I don't even, this is like one T-bar.
That's a hilarious
So
name.
yeah, I think it's probably like 300 feet high or something. I don't even
Nice.
know. but I could do like the snow plow down like a green slope as a kid.
Yeah.
And then I skied a little bit at the Middlebury College Snow Bowl, but I was mostly at Rykert, like on the Nordic trails, just because I felt like it
Hmm.
was more fun and like it was like a more efficient use of time in my
Hmm.
head
Cool.
because you could kind of get, be moving a little bit more than just freezing on the chairlift.
Yeah.
Yes, I didn't ski. I mean, I was like, I could be put on skis and get down, but I would not describe myself as like a good skier. And then when I moved to Utah in 2014 after graduating, then I kind of got more confident on skis.
Okay. So yeah, so no ski that you ski the places with the
Yeah,
better
no.
snow.
I was
Better
doing more
snow.
like walking around on fish scales, uh, yeah, in the forest, like ungroomed
Yeah,
cross country skiing.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
I still love that. Just sort of plowing a track, Nordic. And I'm glad we already made our way to minor ski areas of New England. That's a topic we frequently land on. So
And we
Mount Titcomb, we'll add to the
Yeah.
list.
added to the list, and we've never talked about the Middlebury Snow Bowl either. I don't
We
think
haven't.
Oh,
It's
wow.
where I actually worked and taught skiing,
Oh,
so which was pretty fun.
Yeah, they were lucky to have you, Dave.
Yeah, I guess. It was, I don't know. It was a good time.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So I asked you my presidential range question. What about how about just routes, like some of the major running routes, or even not major, like what's your favorite? And for context, sort of plotting out a lot of different ideas and sort of beginning to think sort of like away from some of like the more sort of notable ones and things like, so I was originally going to do the full Pemi loop next year, but now I'm looking at things like Mahusik and some of these others that are maybe not quite as popular. What would you recommend in that sort of like, I don't know, 25 to 50 mile range in New England?
so my knowledge of the whites is extremely Huts focused.
Okay.
So every time I did anything, it was to go to a hut or between a hut or like, yeah, because I was always visiting someone. I don't think I ever like went, yeah, maybe I did Chicoro like one time and maybe the Moats a couple times in the
Yeah.
winter. But other than that, I like everything that I've done is like within hiking distance of a hut,
Hmm.
running distance of a hut. Um, and at that time I wasn't, other than the hut traverse, I was not like interested in ultra running at all. I didn't know what it was. So I don't think I'm the best one to ask about this. I would ask Andrew Drummond. He's a
Okay.
wealth of knowledge of
Okay, Andrew, if you're
New England.
listening, please,
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
He
write
probably has
in.
some. I've never done a Pemi loop. I think my sister did one because she worked at Galehead.
Nice.
Um, but I always wanted to do one. But because when you work, so like when I was working at Greenleaf, if you were working, then you had to be in the hut um, before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m. So you
Okay.
only had this like 8 hour window. So you couldn't do, I mean, maybe now I could do a full Pemi loop. I don't even know if I could do a Pemi loop in 8 hours. I don't know what the time is
I think
actually.
you could. I think you probably could.
Can I
Okay,
just,
that would be a real challenge to work a hut breakfast, serve breakfast, do your morning chore, like clean the bathroom, and then do a Pemi loop, come back and serve dinner.
can I
That
just,
would be really
can
difficult.
I say I don't, when you guys are talking about huts, I kind of have no idea what you're talking about. So
Oh,
I'm maybe on behalf of some of our listeners who also don't know, can we,
Yeah,
can we
yeah.
explain that?
yeah, so the AMC High Mountain Huts are a network of 8 high mountain huts that span from Pinkham Notch in the east, with Carter Notch Hut, the furthest east point, which is like just behind the Wildcats, basically, like so Wildcat ski area. And the farthest west is Lonesome Lake, which is just on the western side of Franconia Notch. So they're meant to be about a day hike apart for like a family or like someone coming from Sudbury, like from a Boston suburb who wants to come up for a maybe 2 night long weekend. And they hire, so when you pay for your night in the hut. It includes dinner, an evening program, a bunk bed with 3 blankets, 3 wool blankets, and then breakfast. And in order to like maintain these huts, they hire enthusiastic college students, a lot of Middlebury students, a lot of NESCAC students who are living there, and they're on crews of 5 to 10 people, depending on the hut. So, and the huts sleep anywhere from 48, I think is the smallest. No, Carter's 38, and up to 100 and I think Lakes was 103 when I worked there. I might have
Oh,
that
wow.
number wrong, something like that. So yeah, Lakes has 11 people on their crew. So yeah, you basically spend the summer living and working there. You work 11 days on and 3 days off, and you serve breakfast and dinner, and it's a reverse 9 to 5. So you serve breakfast. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have the middle 8 hours off, unless it's your cook day, and then you work from you're the first one awake at like 5, and you're the last one to shut the lights off at like what lights off is at, oh man, this is embarrassing. I can't remember all the details. I think lights off is at 9.
Nice.
And then twice a week you pack out all the trash and carry up all the fresh goods.
Awesome. Does the evening program include entertainment?
The evening program is usually put on by the naturalist, who is an even more enthusiastic person than the rest of the crew, who wants to interact with the public even more than everyone already did. And they usually like walk around and point out some flowers, or do a star talk, or, kind of a general nature talk.
So yeah. So additional entertainment is not required. I was thinking
No.
about hiring even more enthusiastic NESCAC students who could put a dinner theater program together.
Well, we do the whole like dinner service is basically theater. Like, we're in costumes and maybe secretly drank a beer in the back.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe.
No, you
I don't
gotta replace
actually,
calories somehow.
I say that now because I'm pretty sure that the current crews, I think they're like way more professional than we were. I think they're actually very professional and probably don't do that.
That applies to everything now, right? Like
Yeah.
in every walk of life, there used to be the people having a beer covertly, and now that's all over.
A disappointing trend for
Yeah.
sure. And
But
so,
that was
yeah.
always the thing when you visited a hut on your days off. You have to think about the hot commodity are things that are heavy because you have to carry them.
Oh yeah.
So if you're visiting a hut on your days off, or if anyone's listening and they're going to visit a hut and they want to bring a gift to the crew, you should bring something that's like very inconveniently heavy that they would never bring themselves. Examples that don't include alcohol.
I was gonna say because they don't like that anymore. Yeah.
We used to be super happy to get mangoes, or like heavy fruits that you like. A whole watermelon, that would be like jackpot.
Oh, wow.
You're never
Yeah.
gonna carry that up. That's really heavy.
A pomegranate, but then you're sort of stuck, trying to figure out how to open it and get the seeds out. But
It's a kitchen. Yeah.
yeah. Somebody knows how to do it.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna show up at one full Dirty Dancing style and just be like, I carried a watermelon.
They'll be happy, I'm sure.
Yeah, whether they get the reference or not, they'll be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you do your Pemiloop plus working day at a hut in your write-up, you'll have to definitely explain how like the cleaning and breakfast prep like just took away from what would have been a better time. You got to make sure to do that. Nice. And yeah, so you're when you're in a hut, like you are, like you kind of mentioned it, you're in costume and you're sort of expected to like be the entertainment kind of too, right?
Yeah, there's also like in the morning after serving breakfast, I assume they still do this. We would do a skit that basically tells people nicely that they should fold their blankets and pack out their trash and tip the crew.
Nice.
Those are the 3 messages, and they're given in various forms of skits. Yeah, so basically you're always on. You're always, I think the more exhausting thing about the job is that you're basically doing guest service 24/7. And that's why they need college students to do it, because you need to have enough energy to do that. And I would say by the end of the summer, if you go visit a hut towards the end of August, be patient because they might not have that much patience left. I don't know. Maybe they're better than we were. We were a little edgy by the time it got to August.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back in the old days, but
Yeah.
Gotta become world weary and jaded at some point. So,
Yeah, you've had like maybe 4,000 people ask you where the bathroom is.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That's
yeah.
awesome. So another, I guess, shifting gears a little bit, unless, I don't know, Dave, did you have anything else on, I mean, you just learned what a hut is, so
yeah, no, I'm just here to try to follow along and I'm like a fish out of water type, trying to be a stand-in for some of our listeners who aren't as experienced with trail
you're
running or the ultra world or hut-based dinner theater.
yeah,
So yeah,
you're one of those road runners,
yes.
for sure. We will get you into the mountains. That's one sort of narrative arc that we're working on here
I'm
on the
just
podcast.
yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
too far from them so I just have to kind of run roads.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, Manhattan's not a good place for trail running per se. Um, so another, I guess, that I will shift gears. So one thing we often talk about, and it might center on the fact that Dave and I are not the best runners. We love it, but we're not like anywhere near. Uh, uh, we do it for fun, right? But so we end up talking about these various efforts and oftentimes things just go wrong and like some of it's just simple dehydration, poor planning, things like that. But I'm curious if you could share some of your sort of like more troublesome experiences out there. And I'll also add like every picture I've ever seen of you running, like you just always have like the biggest smile on your face. So like is that just always the case? Are you just always loving it, or where have you kind of like hit some rougher patches?
Yeah, because I mean, every race you hit at least one rough patch. But yeah, I would say there's a reason why like a lot of trail runners are like smiling in pictures. One is because it's a pretty small community, so you normally know who the photographer is. So it's probably like your friend. So you see them and you're like, oh, hey, I'm
Hey.
really happy to see you. There are pictures that are taken of me where I don't see the photographer and I am not smiling. So I just want to be clear, I'm not just like smiling the whole time. There are definitely times where I'm like very focused or crying. I've definitely cried during races. So, um, yeah, I mean, most tough points just come from like really lows during races, um, which is usually caused by like not eating enough or like not being able to eat, which is a ongoing thing I'm trying to improve at.
Mhm.
I have like a pretty touchy stomach digestive system that doesn't like the sport as much as I do. So yeah, a lot of points like that, but I think that's pretty standard. There's not that many people who can like get through a whole race without any stomach issue at all.
Mhm.
Um, Trying to think, I don't have any like really fun stories. Uh,
Well, you like it when the conditions get rough, as you said. So, so things going wrong is an opportunity to push yourself and just
Yeah.
yeah, and
problem
I
solve.
mean
I don't know.
it's why we're there, right? Like you don't sign up for an ultra race because you're like, oh, I want to do this. It's gonna be so easy.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. It's gonna be a walk in
I
the
mean, you don't
park.
sign up for any race for that reason. Like even if I were like I used to do more road running in the winters, and you don't like sign up for a 10K because you're like, oh, this is gonna be comfy. Like, no,
Right.
it's
Right.
so uncomfortable.
yeah. No, the
Like,
shorter the race, the more you push yourself and almost kill
yeah.
yourself as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
I just signed
Yeah.
up for a 4 mile midnight New Year's race though that I think will be
Oh.
Oh,
that I
that
don't
actually
think
sounds fun.
right that I don't think I'm gonna in Central Park that I don't think I'm gonna push myself that hard.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
feel like
gonna
I think it would be fun to have more opportunities to do just like fun style races where you're not where it's just like a run and
yeah,
not like a
not a
like I've
race.
always
Yeah.
wanted to do, this marathon, the one in Millinocket, Maine.
Is
No.
oh, is it the I think one of our guests was thinking about doing it and ended up getting injured. But it's like kind of, well, anyway, describe it. Yeah, I'm not
I
super
think it's just
familiar.
called it's just called the Millinocket Marathon. But Millinocket, for anyone who isn't from Maine, is like up there
Yeah,
and very far from everything. And they have a marathon that's like in December, I think.
in December, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's notoriously just like freezing cold. And I've always wanted to do it. I heard from a friend that it's just like people are just that the whole scene is just super fun.
Hmm.
There's people with like taking fireball shots like in the middle of
Oh
the
no.
race, and they have like, hot chocolate at the aid stations, and it just seems like a fun kind of main community event. So that's
Yeah,
something I'd like to do someday. I think it sells out really fast though, so I'd
Does
have to
it?
plan ahead.
that sounds great. Yeah, it sounds like a very flannel marathon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Get
Get
some
a
flannel running tights.
Yeah.
see if you can get a golden ticket for Millinocket.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so guys, I should say we're starting to run out of time. So if I don't know, before we finish this thing up, Trevor, do you have any more questions about New England?
Oh, I probably have like a million questions, but I'll maybe sort of give the floor to you, Katie. We've asked you a lot. Anything that you were hoping to talk about or that you'd like to sort of share with the listeners? That's a pretty open-ended question. We can get more specific if not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was mostly just excited to connect with some New England running folk. I was back in Gardner, Maine, where I grew up this time last year,
Hmm.
and I got to meet some local runners there, and it it was something that really stuck with me because I think sometimes I forget that there's tons of people who are running in like really I'm gonna start over because I think people ask me sometimes like, "Oh, how are you motivated to train?" I'm like, "Well, I'm motivated to train because I live in this like beautiful place. I get to choose when I run. It's my job.
Hmm.
Like I have goals that like I have specific races I'm preparing for, and like I really target them like throughout the year. And then you meet people who are like who are living in Gardner, where it's everything is covered in ice. They're running in like a wool cap. You like every time
Hmm.
you breathe, your lungs are on fire.
Oh
And they're just
yeah,
like, yeah, I run every day. I'm like, I don't, if I lived here, I couldn't do that. Like, so to me, that is so much more inspiring than what I do, because what I do is like, you can look at it as like type one kind of fun. And what they're doing, I think you have to have this like real love for like not necessarily the sport, but like for the movement and like actually being like experiencing running really
yeah.
in the most difficult conditions. I'm not really there yet, maybe someday, but yeah, so hats off to all the New England runners. I don't know how you survive the winter.
That's really awesome. Thank you
Katie,
so
thank you
much,
so
Katie.
much for joining us.
Yeah,
This is
thanks,
really
guys.
awesome.
This is the Power Motion Picnic Hour.
Wow, what a great talk. That was amazing. Thank you again, Katie, for joining us. That was so cool.
Yes, thank you, Katie.
Yeah. All right. Well, here we are on the other side. Um,
Yeah, that means we have to think of some other things to talk about.
I have so much. I mean, and we don't have that much time really. But there's weekend running, there's mailbag.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there,
Well, why don't you kick us off? Dave's
well,
choice.
well, I did get an interesting. We'll start with mailbags. I got a couple interesting entries. So a couple weeks ago, we solicited a question from our listeners if any of them were good at math, and
Oh,
if they
yep.
could tell us how many, um, if they could figure out how many people voted in the Bird of the Year contest, uh,
Right, right.
which
Based
wrinkled.
on the percentages carried by each bird for the different categories.
Yeah, and so after 2 episodes ago, we got an answer written in, and
And
then
what was that answer?
and just real quickly, and then
Yeah.
we didn't discuss it last episode, and so I got another mailbag since then saying, "What's the answer?"
What's the answer?
So
Uh,
we got. Let me find it. We got an answer written in. The I think they wrote in 15. Yep, 15 was the answer we got.
yes.
And is that correct?
It is in some ways close.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna say not correct.
It is not. I mean, in the world of math, it is quite binary, isn't it? This
Yeah.
is not a correct answer.
No, I think the correct answer is 7 people voted
Correct.
for
Correct.
for bird of the year.
A modest turnout, but these things are all, building. We're definitely just sort of a lot of this year, and I guess we'll get into a lot of this sort of retrospective on our grand finale of 2023,
Yeah.
which will be next episode. Give listeners something to look forward to, but everything we've done sort of in this first sort of eight months of podcasting, it's all been semi experimental, right?
Oh yeah.
We're just picking things up as we go.
Yeah, this has not been fully approved. But math, I think in a lot of ways is like running. You have good days, you have bad days. So
Yeah.
just I guess, this might have been for some of our listeners doing math at home and writing in. Not the best math day, but just keep putting on those running shoes or your math shoes, and the next math problem that comes out, just try again.
That's right. Yeah, I can think of a few different sort of corollaries maybe to running and running wisdom. One is, um, a race. It's not about finishing. It's just about starting, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Having the courage to just take that step and go do it. I'd say this listener embraces that. And yeah, and it also I think ties into some of what we were talking about with Katie, which is like things shouldn't necessarily be about like time or place in a race or getting the correct answer in a math problem. It should be about sort of the experience. Was it an adventure? Did you have fun?
Yeah.
I can just hope this listener sort of exercised the brain a little bit, did some work. And I say got close because we said that, there was the potential that a listener would land on the correct factor of the number, but not the number itself. And in that case would have probably done the math correctly.
Mhm.
So, that's all to say, bravo listener. We appreciate your math, and thanks for writing in.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I got the impression from the way they wrote in that this listener didn't like write out the math problem and try to figure it out, that they kind of just took a stab, which
Soul math.
soul math. Yeah, doing some soul math. Exactly. I think it was clear though that this listener did not receive or give any unauthorized aid on that math problem.
Unsupported. It was an
Yeah.
unsupported effort.
Exactly.
Yeah. It'll go down in legend, much like certain FKTs are there's always some debate. There's the website and the tracking, but then there's also these tales of people that ran it many years ago before they tracked things in such a manner, right?
That's right.
Unverified, cannot verify, but
Yeah, that's right.
well, what a great mailbag.
What a great mailbag. I guess I have one other that I didn't really want to bring up, but it got written in by 2 different people, and maybe this one I could bleep the hell out of.
Okay.
But because 2 people wrote in about a certain pop star and her pre-tour exercise routine. And
Yep.
I think that how it's like basically an ultra marathon workout, and she does like 3.5 hours on the treadmill just singing her whole show. I'm just not going to say her name. And
Yeah, no need.
yeah, but that's something I'd like to try myself. I know as someone who's done a lot of singing on stage while also being kind of very, I don't know, athletic, jumping around and moving a lot the whole time, that it takes some pretty good conditioning to do that kind of thing. And singing is pretty exhausting on its own.
Yeah, and and a lot of the early sort of aerobic buildup that coach had me doing, one of the tests, one of the measures. So trying to just sort of, you're not pushing, serious pace. You're not trying to get your heart rate too much. You're just trying to sort of stay in this zone, and having a conversational, being able to still sort of talk without like a belabored breath was a good indicator of just being in that right place. So you have to kind of be there to sing your whole 3-hour show
For sure.
while running.
that's kind of one of my favorite parts of if you're ever running with a friend where like you're running pretty far, maybe let's say you're running 10 miles together and you're having like a great conversation. But then
Yeah.
you get to like mile 6. Just
Yeah.
no one's talking because you're both exhausted and you don't have the
It's among the reasons why I prefer running slow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
can practice your set.
Yeah. Speed is just a way to go a little bit longer in the amount of time I have, but yeah, like the long slow stuff.
Yeah.
All right. And so you said you had some other stuff you want to talk
Well,
weekend
that's
running?
all. Yeah, that's all I got mailbag. Do you have any mailbag or no?
I don't think I have any mailbag this week.
Well,
Um,
weekend running. Yeah, it's just kind of a normal weekend running. But since we were, we talked for weeks about how busy and sick we both were. And then when I finally got back to running, it felt a little rough. But I finally,
mhm.
2 days ago, I just got out there right after work in the evening, ran along the Hudson River. It was like 55 degrees and just ran about 7 miles. Um, and just felt amazing. It was probably the first like amazing feeling run I've had
Mhm.
in like a month or 6 weeks. That was pretty awesome. So yeah, great weekend running. 5 out of 5 would recommend.
Yeah, and I'd say I had in some ways similar, but in some ways quite opposite weekend running. Similar in that, yeah, I've been sort of feeling a bit, out of shape, not quite in the shape I was in at the start of the year, through to my race in September, but have been feeling like pretty good recently on some recent runs. And this run I did, sort of the notable run of the week, I did not feel very good. It was cold out, lungs were burning, and I was dragging, in particular on the uphills. So
Oh,
again, this isn't to lament and be negative. It's sort of it's just building up more of the case for this exciting turnaround and sort of refresh on kind of more serious structured training, thinking about some goals and some big stuff to look forward to, and then sort of build a plan around that. So it's all just sort of the baseline of where I am now, and shows that there's a lot of room to probably get some quick gains too once I get back to it in earnest. So I'll spin it. I'll sort of reframe it and spin it as a bit of a positive in that case.
yeah, and it's also a positive in the sense that we tell a lot of our guests that our favorite thing is when they tell stories about when things go wrong.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's nice for us to give back and provide examples of when it goes wrong for us, even if not as hilariously wrong as sometimes happens.
yes. Even our very average running is prone to some rather wild swings.
Yeah.
Uh, but so yeah, that was my weekend running.
Well, what a week. And I think that segues us nicely into maybe worth mentioning. This is probably our second to last episode of our inaugural year, uh,
Hmm.
comprising of 1 7/8 of a season. Next math problem, tell us how many more episodes are left in this season if we've if we've done 7/8 of it. Or if we do this one plus one more in a year, how many next year will be 1/8? Okay, you get it. Pencils down.
It's
The,
it's
that was
confusing. It's a confusing math question.
time's up. We'll put the math question more clearly in the Instagram. Please reply with an answer on Dave Rawlings' Instagram, and just to keep the integrity of the system. But
Yeah.
after this last, what I'd call a normal podcast episode, I think we're going to have one more this year where we'll do not just the weekend running, but the year in running. So stay tuned. Right, coming up, we're going to have a big update of it episode with follow up and information and anything else we can make up on the fly crammed in there.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff. We sort of answer some questions that were put out there earlier in the year. Get some updates. Just some fun end of year stuff.
Yeah.
Which I imagine they might do on podcasts.
Yeah, gear shed item of the year, maybe song of the year. I can't wait to find out
Ooh, song of the year.
who wins oat bar of the year. That's that's going to be a close race. So
Yeah, yeah.
we'll announce all that, and as always, if you have any questions, figure out a way to get in touch with us, and hopefully we'll remember to address it on the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to come into next episode with the mailbag bursting and a lot of stuff to respond to from the community as well. I think we got a lot to look forward to next year too. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that.
I can think of no better time to ramble on about the seasons than at a year-end retrospective episode. So I think we should probably leave it as until next time.
Onward.
We used to think of running it, yeah, now it's This is the Power Motion Picnic Hour, your favorite of the few, with a mile of opinions that we'll gladly share with you. This is the Power Motion Picnic Hour, you deserve nothing less. The Power Motion Picnic Hour, sometimes with special guests. Say your name, special guest.
Katie Schide.
This is the Power Motion